Hello!
Hi!
My name is Cobb.
My name is Mikayla.
And welcome to
Work in Progress! I like how we had the whole hand motion thing too.
Yeah. So, Mikayla and I have been good friends for about 3 years now. And a few weeks ago, I think, she came to me with the idea of starting a podcast. It actually was like a joke that...
Yeah. It was like a joke, but like one of those jokes where you're like, this would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, if I did this, you're the person that I would do this with.
Yep.
But I'm not serious because I'm a piece of trash.
You're not. But also, yeah, Mikayla came to me with that idea as a kind of a joke, kind of not, but then we actually really loved the idea. So a few weeks later, here we are, starting a podcast.
It's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. The name we came up with 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. So I guess we should just kind of segue right into it. Kind of I wouldn't say the goal, but the vision that we have is to just kind of talk about, different issues that are affecting our communities and just, affecting our country. So it's going to be primarily focused on, socioeconomic and political issues.
Yeah.
We'll have time for fun stuff here and there.
Yes, we will try to not be all sad, but there are some sad things going on that we will need to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to talk about it, and people are talking about it, but getting your 2 cents out there, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing, sometimes. Depending on the person whose 2 cents are being shared.
Don't necessarily want to hear Kim K's 2 cents on culinary arts.
Okay.
And before there was like 8 comments, like, she graduated culinary school, you asshole.
But yeah, I think we're both very passionate about social issues and socioeconomic political issues and such. And, having an outlet to talk about that and discuss it with other people is useful, and also hopefully, I don't know, I don't want to say bringing awareness too, because we just had a conversation about this, but in a way kind of bringing awareness to some of these topics.
Let's go back to that for a second before we touch it. So the conversation we were having was like, it's just basically, it's time to stop raising awareness for all these issues and actually fucking do something about it. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, but I don't see a senator sitting next to me.
Yeah.
I just see Cobb, and unfortunately I myself am not an elected official in this country. I'm not old enough to be one. So, until then, we can do our part to just try to, get our ideas out there.
Yeah, so every episode will probably be focused on a different topic. We specifically chose today's topic to kind of tie it into my personal YouTube channel because we wanted to kind of start building our ground and then graduate onto wider issues. But we've already come up with like a list of topics we want to delve into, and they do get pretty intense at times. Some are lighter, some are more intense, and we also hope to maybe start featuring other creators down the line. But yeah, I think honestly with that we should start chatting about our topics for today.
So I'm sure that anybody viewing this is probably aware of there is absolutely no problem in this country at all regarding gun violence. It's not like it's the second leading cause of death for adolescents or anything, but we're in Central California, within reasonable distance to where the Gilroy shooting happened. And I know a lot of people didn't even hear about the Gilroy shooting because only 3 people died. And it's really sad that, 3 people isn't a big deal anymore, but it's a big deal to us and our community when, all of the mass shootings are, of course, a big deal. But it's a little harder to process something when it's happening to your own community, and like when it's your Snapchat that you're seeing videos on of people running away screaming, and it's a little different than, just seeing the articles pop up in the headlines and reading about the heroes. It just hits you differently.
But I think we're reaching a point where everyone is now like on their Snapchat seeing people run away, because that's how many shootings this country is going through. Because right after Gilroy, there were 2 more shootings, one in El Paso, Texas, one in Dayton, Ohio. And the fact that nothing has changed in spite of the unimaginable number of shootings that are constantly happening in this country is, quite frankly, ridiculous.
I just think it's frustrating when you have politicians on one side saying, well, oh, it's the media and it's the video games and it's this and it's that, and we're breeding a culture that, like, it enforces this behavior. And on the other hand, we have politicians saying, oh, well, it's mental health issues and it's this and it's that. But on neither side do we have people really trying to exact real change. And it's just frustrating because it's like, how many people do we have to hear about dying? How many people need to get gunned down in the streets? How many innocent people are gonna die before something actually changes? It's like, it's sad because these are the same questions that I was asking myself 2 years ago when Pulse happened. And, it's the same question I asked myself when Virginia Tech happened. It's the same question that I ask myself every single time. It's like, when is enough going to be enough? Yeah. And I really thought, when Parkland happened with the March for Our Lives, I really thought that was going to be the moment that we really saw some change. And, I guess we are talking about politics because this is a political issue. I'm not going to delve into Trump and him, but I think that it was responsible to do the bump stock ban, so shortly after that, just because, senators on the left and right did absolutely nothing and have continued to do absolutely nothing. And just seeing like bump stocks, which, allows a semi-automatic weapon to become an automatic weapon, allowing, taking that and banning that, is a good first step.
But taking away any possible cause for this, whether people are arguing that it is video games or mental health, which is a whole issue in itself, but whether people are arguing that, the fact of the matter is it does matter why the shootings are happening, but also the first and foremost thing is to take guns away from the hands of anyone who could use them against people, whether they're doing it because they just want to, whether they're doing it because of video games. It doesn't matter. Taking the gun out of their hands is a necessary step.
I think that, something we have a big problem with in this country is, we have systems in place for background checks and we have systems in place for flagging these people. We just don't use them the right way. Yeah. And I think it's called red flag legislation, where if, somebody's posting specific words such as retribution and, bomb and redemption, if somebody is posting words online that generally lead to a terrorist act, then they might get flagged. And there are states that have been introducing red flag legislation where they can then go and they can take their weapons and be like, hey, you're not safe to own that. And, that's a good thing, but it's still, not something that we have on a federal level. And if we could just identify these people and get them help, and whether that help is mental health help whether it's, you know, criminal proceedings, if, you know, their actions are actually criminal, because unfortunately if you stop someone before they commit a shooting, before they have committed a crime, it's going to be harder to prosecute in court unless they have like a set in stone plan. They have the weapons and everything, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, something that has not been in the news as much lately, I mean, some people saw this, but in the last like month and a half, there were actually 3 shootings that were stopped before they happened. And so I guess we're getting better at that, but I also think that the amount of shootings is just increasing and increasing and increasing. So the fact that we stopped 3 and maybe like a year ago we only caught like 1 in the same time period, it's, I don't know, it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that analogy applies there, but it's but I definitely think that we as a country like need to be more, we need to identify more quickly people who could be at risk, and we need to get weapons away from them. And also we need to just make it so that our weapons are not so readily available.
Yeah, to anyone.
Because it's like literally like anybody.
Yeah, because like someone could potentially get a weapon when they're in a better state, but down the line something could happen and they could then decide that they're going to commit a shooting. Like, it shouldn't be so easy to get weapons. And the fact of the matter with everyone who keeps talking about the Second Amendment made sense at the time it was written for what it was written for. But we don't live in those times anymore. We live in a different world today. And to continue using a law or a rule that was written in like the 1700s in a time that was completely different to our experience today as justification for what's happening today doesn't make any sense.
You know, in the Bible, in the Bible, okay. In Leviticus, there is a full chapter where it's just full of rules, and it's like don't eat shellfish. Mm-hmm. There's like don't wear a certain kind of clothes, yes. And in the same text it says like it's, you know, anti-homosexuality. But when you're reading through this text, something that I shouldn't be bringing this up right now because I haven't read it in so long and I can't like actually quote it, but the laws make sense to the time because at the time it was dangerous to eat shellfish because, you know, there were these parasites and stuff. Yeah. These laws made sense to the time, but now we're in 2019 and the language of the Second Amendment is so purposefully broad because at the time that was what was needed. It's so broad that it just, you know, it leaves too much room for interpretation. We're not in a time where we need to arm ourselves. Like, I guess like trying to do research for this, one of the arguments that I saw was, well, we need to be able to have the ability to protect ourselves and like rise up in a militia if, you know, something happens with the government. And I'm sorry, but why would we need to do that? Like, I understand we kind of do have, like, like, you have your issues with the government, whatever, like, we do kind of have an oppressive government on, you know, certain levels. But in a time where, you know, we are literally in a militia civil war against our government, you know, I don't see that happening in America. And I think that having more weapons readily available would lead to more death.
And also the other factor is that the language around these shootings is so telling. Like, when certain shooters are called mass murderers or are called regular people, when other people are immediately branded terrorists.
You know, it's just fucked up. I'm going to be real blunt here. But it's fucked up that, like, a Muslim kid can kill 6 people and he's a terrorist. and then a white person can kill 50 people and he's a mass murderer.
And obviously nobody should be killing anybody.
Yeah.
But as long as we condone the racism behind this, it's only going to make the entire situation worse, because some of these shootings have literally been hate crimes. Like Pulse, the shooting in, where was it, North Carolina, South Carolina?
I don't know which one you're talking about. I'm sorry, like, honestly, I don't do a lot of research into the specific people because it triggers me, but...
That's valid. But, they're, like, some of these shootings are literally hate crimes, and if you are not looking at that factor, you're not understanding why the shootings are happening, you're then prescribing the reasons to be video games and mental health.
Sorry.
No, you can go.
Like, so many of these shootings, there's white supremacists, there's, like, incel rhetoric that the person is, like, posting online before, and that the person is, like, you know, engaging in. And, you know, we have a culture in America, and I know people are going to disagree with me here, but we have a culture that is complicit to white supremacy. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not endorsing it per se. I think that some people do, but we as a country and as a culture are not specifically endorsing white supremacy, but we are complicit in it. And we just allow it to keep going under the rug. And I don't remember who it was. I think it was Hannity. Somebody on Fox News just said that white supremacy is this great big hoax and that you couldn't even fit all of the members of white supremacy, like, agencies or groups in a football stadium. And yeah, well, that might be true. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it isn't. The dude who just posted that fucking white supremacist manifesto online right before the shooting wasn't a member of the KKK. He was just your ordinary, or I guess not ordinary. He was your ordinary homegrown terrorist who doesn't partake in those groups and isn't a registered member of those groups. It's just somebody who has these thoughts and has these ideas about the world. And there's so many of those types of people out there who have these ideas about the world. Not just white supremacists, but, like, literally any extremist.
It's just
exhausting.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. It is exhausting, and it's frightening to live in a world like this. You shouldn't have to live in a world where you're scared.
It's like, okay, so I'm going to tell a story. I worked at an amusement park for a fair bit of time. And while I was at that amusement park, in the period of time that I was working there, there were 2 stabbings and 2 shootings in a parking lot, literally 1,000 yards from where I was working at. That's not what I was scared of when I was working. When I was working, I was scared that if there is a shooting in this part of California, if there is a mass shooting in this part of California, it will happen here at this amusement park, because this is where the most people are condensed at any given time. And, you know, we don't have a big concert venue here. This is where it would happen. And it's fucked up that I can literally work in a place where there's a fairly high crime rate and where there's a fairly high rate of people getting, attacked, kidnapped. Like, it's just a very high crime rate area. And I would have to walk to the bus stop. I would walk with coworkers, obviously, but I would have to walk through this area like 11:30, 12 at night when I'm getting off work. But that's not what I was scared of. I was scared that if a mass shooting happened where I lived, that would be where it happened. And that's not a fear that any, freckled 15-year-old with their first job should have.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't even intended to be the main topic of our episode. This time, we wanted to bring it up because, 3 shootings happened back to back right as we were planning to start this podcast, and we thought it was so important to bring it up and to offer, I don't even know what we can offer to victims of this kind of shooting or to the people who are now plagued with this trauma for the rest of their lives, but just say that we see what happens to you and that we hear you and that your story deserves to be told. But there's so much to be said about it that we've been going on, and it's, I mean, like Mikayla said, it's just exhausting. That kind of fear should not be what you're forced to live with. There are so many countries where shootings did happen and immediately they changed the laws to protect the people. And the fact that we have had more shootings than I could ever count, and we are still not changing the laws to save lives is ridiculous. So, I mean, unfortunately, this is not a segment we can end with a happy ending, because there is no happy ending, but we have listed sources in the description below. We posted a link to March for Our Lives, so you can check that out to donate or to march or to engage in some action, hopefully, or you can look at some of the other sources that are more informative on gun control and gun laws and gun rights in America today. But yeah, there's no happy ending to this one.
Alright, before we move on to our next little topic, I'm going to say one more thing. If anybody here is a survivor of one of the shootings, I just want it to be really clear that it should be your story that is heard. Mm-hmm. It should not be the perpetrator. Mm-hmm. And it should not, I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't even post their name and their face out there, because that's what they want. They want their recognition. They want to be...
They want the fame.
Some sort of fucked up celebrity. And we should not give that to them. We should make... When we talk about this in the news, we need to make it about the people who survived and the people who died but saved lives. Those are the people we need to be recognizing. But yeah. So, our next topic, we were going to talk about just general representation in media. And
yeah, definitely a topic change.
Yeah, we're gonna segue right into it. This is not something we should laugh about. It makes it so much easier though.
Yeah, sometimes when things are so screwed up, you just have to laugh, because otherwise you just wallow in sadness, and that's not healthy.
No, it is not.
Yeah, so we're gonna just talk about representation and in media and diversity and that kind of business, which is something that I'm sure if you've come here from my channel, you would know I'm very passionate about. And Mikayla has some thoughts as well that she'd like to share. So we're just gonna start chatting. I'm very sorry for this very abrupt segue. We do not have a better one, so we're just switching topics like that.
Yeah, we'll just give you some jazz hands.
Okay.
Alright. I have something to say.
Okay.
So I think that we as a culture are generally getting better about this. But we're still nowhere near where we should be. Mm-hmm. But I also think that there's kind of a toxic culture around canceling people who've straight people who've done queer roles before. But if you've done a queer role 15 years ago, I think that the culture was different then, and if you are the person who's saying, yes, I'm not going to take these roles anymore, and I recognize that there are plenty of LGBT actors who could tell this story better than me. I think that's really important, and I think that we should kind of commend the people, not commend them, but we should not be trying to cancel the people who have spoken out on this,
I think the topic of canceling people is almost too complex to go into in this episode.
Yes.
That needs
we can do a whole episode on cancel culture.
That needs an episode of its own. I'm also, in terms of this specific topic, I'm of the mindset that, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, I do think that straight people can play queer roles such as playing a gay character or a bi character. I don't think a cis person should play a trans person.
Yes. Okay.
That I don't think, but I think that gay people, bi people, lesbians, etc., should be able to play straight people on screen, and I feel like that should go vice versa, because that I do believe can be done through acting, and I also think that we don't always know actors' sexualities, and it's dangerous to assume, because there are so many actors who have come out after playing a queer role for the first time. You know, I can think of quite a few off the top of my head. Tyler Blackburn recently came out as bisexual, and he played a gay character on Roswell, New Mexico. Keenan Lonsdale and another actor in Love, Simon both came out after acting in that movie. So I do think that that concept is a little bit more complicated, but I do think as a general rule, cis people should not play trans people, white people should not be playing people of color. Like, those I think are basic no-nos that you need to understand.
I agree with you. Like, white people should not be playing black people. You know, you should not have a cis person playing a trans person. Like, that, like, you know, especially because there's so many, like, trans and people of color actors out there who don't get those roles.
Exactly.
And because, like, 95, I don't know what the actual number is, but 95% of, like, the top paid actors in Hollywood are white and mostly, primarily male, but are white.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a fact. Yeah. And cis, like, I'm betting that 100% of the most paid actors in Hollywood are cis. So, you know, they're not things that, you know, we need.
Yeah.
But,
and it's like there are so many aspiring, you know, trans and people of color actors out there. It's not like we don't have any. It's not like there are none to choose from.
Yeah,
because they're out there.
There's so many great ones.
Yeah, and there's so many talented ones that we even know of, and there are aspiring ones that, you know, we get to discover that are also so good, and it's kind of doing a disservice, honestly, by casting people who can't do proper justice to the role.
Yeah. I do want to touch on what you said, about, like, gay people playing, like, straight people and, like, straight people playing gay people.
There's a difference.
Because, like, I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion or not, but I do kind of agree, because part of acting is you're telling a story.
Yeah.
And if you are hired as an actor, you are hired to pretend to be something that you're not.
Yes.
And, you know, like, stepping into the role of a gay person or stepping into the role of a straight person, and especially, like, if you're a gay person playing a straight person, because there's so many more straight roles out there than gay roles. Like, if you are a gay actor only playing gay roles, you are doing, like, one role every 5 years.
Basically, yeah.
Like, it's bad, but like, I also understand where people are coming from when they say that they don't want to see straight people playing gay roles.
Yeah, no, I totally see that point of view as well.
Because there are plenty of LGBT qualified actors who can tell that story and can, you know, with accuracy, and especially because it is such an important walk and such an important struggle that there is, you know.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. There is something to the authenticity and the personal association with being able to play a role that actually exemplifies your sexuality or something similar to your sexuality, and I don't mean to take away from that at all, but I guess this is something that I don't think. Again, this could go back into cancel culture, which is not where I want this topic to go to, but I feel like this is something that every viewer has to make a personal choice for. If you don't feel comfortable watching a straight person play a queer role, that is valid, but I also think that it is okay for people who are okay watching that. That's my personal stance on it.
Yeah.
And another point I wanted to make in terms of this is we talk a lot about what's on the screen or the actual characters in a book. Like, we talk a lot about the face representation in a way, but we also need to talk about diversity behind the screens, like diversity in writers' rooms, diversity in publishing houses, like that kind of stuff is also so necessary, because sometimes if you do have, for example, a straight person playing a queer role, behind the scenes, the director is a gay person, and there's something to be said about that. So I think that we also need to consider the importance of diversity behind the screen, because that's just as important.
Yeah. Did you ever watch that movie that I told you to watch, the Mikayla movie?
I didn't.
Okay, that's totally fine. But there was
want to watch
such a great movie about this. I'm sorry, I really enjoyed this movie. I went and saw it with my mom, but it's Mindy Kaling getting basically hired as a diversity hire on a staff of all white male writers for this TV show. And then she comes in and saves the show. Spoiler alert. Sorry guys. But like I think that it's monumentally important to have that diversity like in the writers' room, and I 100% agree with you there, because you know, what's the point of telling like this beautiful on-screen story of you know, I'm just gonna say like a Hindu love story between you know, a Hindu and a Muslim, because that's, you know, traditionally, if, you know, all 10 of the writers in the writer's room are white dudes, or, you know, there's 6 white dudes, you know, 1 Indian woman and then 2 white women, like that's, you know, you're not gonna have like a really accurate telling of the story if you can't get some real input from people who have really lived that.
And I completely agree with you there, but like also, even just in shows that aren't focused on concepts of diversity, like any kind of show that you're watching, like a lot of them may have some kind of diversity, like I don't know, like the CW shows, like most of them aren't really focused on diversity, but like in their writers' rooms, and I don't know anything about the CW writers' room, so don't come for me if they actually are diverse. I'm just using them as an example. Like, but in their writers' rooms, no matter what, like there should be women, there should be queer people, there should be people of color, there should be people of different religious backgrounds. Like there should be all voices, because having so many varying voices and experiences is what really makes a show or a movie so great. Having that kind of variety.
And I think that that's like broader than just, you know, say in media. I think that that should be like the case for all workplaces.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
true.
Yeah, like, I mean, in an ideal world, we would have that kind of like,
you
know, but that's never gonna happen, because, you know, unfortunately we live in a world where, you know, in my town, the population is pretty much split 50% white people, 50% Mexican people. So, you know, we're going to have diversity, but we're going to have diversity of 2 races.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, I completely agree that it should be in all workplaces. Specifically in terms of representation, though, what I think is so cool about it is that media has the power to be both a mirror and a window. Like, there are stories you're going to be able to read or see that are going to represent yours exactly, and then there are going to be stories you read or see that are of a completely different experience, and I think that that's what's so beautiful about it, and that beauty can... That's my dog, sorry. The only way that can really be done, the only way that beauty can really be done authentically is when the stories are being told by people of all backgrounds, identities, and whatever other factors there are. I think
Calm down, dude.
I think that's just what makes media the most powerful, because those are really the most powerful stories we see.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I think, like, especially when you're, like, when you have a story with, like, some authenticity to it, it's just, it's completely different.
Yeah, and it's just...
That was great.
It's just... Like, for me, what's really hard is the argument against diversity and representation, because I just don't see how anyone really loses out in it, because giving more roles to people of color doesn't mean white people no longer get roles. Giving more roles to queer people or to people of different religious backgrounds or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're taking roles away from straight people or from like Christians or whatever the predominant religion is. You're not taking those roles away, you're just adding in some new faces, and I just don't see how people get so upset about it. Like, you see it so often, especially with like the Marvel movies and stuff, when they're changing things. Like right now there's going to be a female Thor, there's Valkyrie is going to be confirmed on screen as queer, and she's being played by a black woman, and there are so many people who are so upset about it, but giving these roles to Tessa Thompson and Natalie Portman doesn't mean that, you know, there aren't still like white men in the Marvel universe, because there definitely are. It's not like one person wins and the other person loses. It's a situation where everyone gets to win. And I feel like that's what people aren't understanding. They're thinking like, oh, you're taking my role and now I'm not going to get to be seen. But that's not the argument.
I feel like there's like this concept of like extra rights. You know? It is really ridiculous because, you know, queer people aren't asking for extra rights. Black people aren't asking for extra rights. They're asking for the same baseline that has been given to white people forever.
Exactly.
Like, if you are a cis white person, or a cis white male, sorry, like, people don't like when we're talking about cis white males because they feel super attacked, but these are things that have been given to cis white males just forever, as long as film and television have been around. And we're not asking for, you know, anything extra. We're just asking that it be equal.
Yeah, it's not asking for special treatment, it's asking for equal treatment.
Yeah, and it's like, it's so frustrating just hearing that like thrown around, like, oh, well, you want that? Like, well, then just earn it like everybody else has. Well, sorry, but if it's not even being offered, what are we supposed to do here?
How do you earn something that you don't have the grasp of?
It's like if they're not they're offering a role that is just average guy, plays basketball, you know, spends his Friday nights going out to bars, and that is the description for the character. It doesn't, you know, he doesn't have any specific race, he doesn't have any specific whatever. That role should be equally opportunity casted to, you know, white men, black men, you know,
Asian men, Latino men, Native American men.
Thank you. Like, it shouldn't just, you know, automatically, like, you walk into the final tryouts and it's Chad, Brad, and Kyle sitting there. Like, those are our finalists. Like, it's frustrating because there's so many, you know, there's so much out there.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're not taking advantage of that.
Yeah, like, there's so much talent out there, and we're just saying no because of ideas that have been ingrained from so long ago, but times evolve, and people just, like, don't get that. Like, it's okay to grow and change with the times. You don't have to stay steadfast in what used to happen. Just because things used to be different doesn't mean that has to be how it is now.
You know, I can still remember, like, growing up in like 2nd and 3rd grade and being raised on this idea that America is this really big, beautiful melting pot. And that was something that I loved growing up because, you know,
well, that's what America's like sold as the melting pot.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's like literally like for years and years and years, but like as I've gotten older and older and like more aware of what's going on, it's like we're so hypocritical that we're called this melting pot, but anybody who isn't like a carrot in the melting pot, you know, if you're not a carrot, you don't belong here.
Try to be a potato, they kick you right out.
Yeah, get out of here, them potatoes. Yeah. We don't want you lentils in here.
And also, while talking about representation, also the idea of these beauty standards, I feel like beauty standards could also be like another entire video.
Oh yeah, we could.
Honestly.
Yeah.
But just like, who gets perceived as beautiful, as the ideal love interest? Like, it's a light-skinned, thin person 99% of the time, and that's so harmful. Like, when you never get to see someone who looks like you, or who thinks like you, or who acts like you grow up thinking that your story is less than. It's not deserving. And when you grow up with that mentality, it affects how you live your life. It seems like a dramatic jump from, oh, there aren't very many queer people on TV, to queer people may end up hating themselves, but there is some kind of correlation between those two, because if everyone around you, everyone you're seeing, everyone who's getting praised as the heroes of the stories is so different from you, you're going to feel like you can never be the hero. You can never be the person whose story gets told, and that mentality gets internalized, and you start thinking that you're less than, that you don't try to achieve your dreams because you don't think your dreams are within reach.
Yeah. I mean, I can just speak on this for a second, but like, when I didn't know what gay was until I was in like gay. Like, no, it was an insult at school. I didn't know what it meant until I was in like 4th grade. Which is kind of funny because I had a gay great grandma like all along.
Wait, I think that you actually figured out what gay meant earlier than I did. I don't think I knew till middle school.
Yeah, but like I figured out what it was when like my mom turned off the TV. Because I think it was an episode of like Friends or something. It was one of those old sitcoms. It was like That 70s Show or Friends or something. Mm-hmm. And they had like a lesbian
couple. There's a lesbian couple on Friends.
It was like a very like, but it was like really stereotypical. Like they had the butch and the femme, like whatever. And my mom is like turned off the TV and was like, I don't want you like, watching this because I don't want you exposed to this. And like I have known for a very long time that I like girls. Shocker.
I'm shocked.
Who could have known?
Who would have guessed?
But like ever since like my first innocent, elementary school, middle school crushes where you just, you think somebody's attractive, they were pretty equally split between guys and girls. And that was like kind of the first time it like clicked in my head that like, is something wrong? Like, am I different? But when you grow up like that and you grow up with this mentality that, you're different somehow, or you're the other somehow, or you're not the norm, it can really impact your self-esteem, and it can really impact a lot of like your development getting older and growing up. It's, it can be really, really harmful.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first time I really understood the idea that I might not be straight was by Santana from Glee, which, that was such a bad show, but regardless, I watched it as a middle schooler, and I remember the scene where Santana came out to her grandma, and she said, I like girls the way I'm supposed to like boys. And when she said that, something like hit in my brain, and then I pushed down lesbianism for years, which is a separate issue. But like seeing that, like before that, I felt like I was forced to like guys, and even after that there were times I felt the same way, but at least I knew that like at least there's someone else like me, and that feels so comforting in a way. Like, growing up, I am the darkest skinned person in my family, and I would ask my mom why I had to be born darker skinned than everyone else, because I didn't understand why I had to be cursed with a skin that wasn't considered beautiful. Because no one looked like me. No one who was the love interest in these stories looked like me, so I never thought that I could be the hero or the love interest or any character of worth. So I never thought my story was of any worth until I started reading stories with Indian main characters who have the same culture as me, who are dark-skinned like me, because I can go into a whole rant about colorism within India, but we're not going to jump into that right now. We don't need to jump into that right now, but just like, when you see yourself for the first time, when you see some part of you for the first time, it's like this warm, comforting hug.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like a little message, like, you're valid, your story is valid, and that can be really powerful. And also, that can be so powerful, but so can seeing stories about people who aren't like you. Like, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Jewish, I don't know those stories, but I can watch those stories, I can read those stories, and I can see those experiences, Yeah. Like, there's so much power to media, and I feel like we don't do it justice when we don't allow it to be as great as it truly can be.
You know, there's so many great stories to be heard.
Yeah.
And, you know, just because I am a white middle-class woman doesn't mean that the crisis at the border doesn't matter to me. And it doesn't mean that those stories don't matter to me. They do.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just feel like it's, you know, it really is such a loss.
Yeah.
For everybody, because, you know, I'm a firm believer that we become better people by opening ourselves up to other perspectives and other stories, because if you're always going to live your life thinking one thing, you're never going to grow. I'm going to tell us a story.
Okay, tell your story.
Lots of stories today. So I went to a church that was very conservative growing up, given where I live. Like, most of the churches in my area were pretty, like, LGBT accepting, like, friendly, like, but this one in particular was not, and that's not what the story is about. But I recently moved back to the town where that church was in, and, you know, first, you know, month living somewhere, I'm trying to reconnect with some old friends, so I decided to go back to church.
Fun.
Spoiler alert, bad idea. No, not like bad idea, but spoiler alert, it didn't really go that well.
Yeah.
But, you know, actually, like, the service was alright. I talked to some of my old, you know, people that I grew up going to church with, which was kind of nice. And then I ended up, you know, taking a walk with this guy who was like a year and a half older than me, was in the same, like, kind of class with my older sister. And I'm just like, you know, this is after like 25 minutes of talking, but I'm just talking about how, like, you know, I feel like it makes me a better person to surround myself with people who think differently than me. And I was, like, making a point about, like, like, how my friends aren't all, you know, white cis people, and how, like, you know, I have friends who are Mexican, and I have friends who are black, and I have friends who are Muslim, and I have friends who are Christian, and I have friends from all of these different, you know, labels. That's what I'm gonna call it. All of these different labels, and that's, you know, a really fucking terrible way to put it, but I have friends from different walks, and I was talking to him about how I felt like that made me a bigger person. And he turns and looks at me and he says, well, I don't want to be friends with sinners.
Ooh,
and
fun.
You know, being raised in the church, you're raised on this fundamental idea that all humans are sinners. No human is perfect. We are all sinners. So I'm just, like, standing there looking at this guy, and I'm like, you're literally no better than me. Like, the only difference between me and you on a biblical standpoint is you have been saved, and, you know, I've been saved too, but I just chose to kind of recant that.
You said, no thank you, I don't need this.
You know, I'll go party with the gays down in hell. But it's just like, for me, it's just like, it's a loss for this guy to just only surround himself with Christian, or as he perceives, not sinners, because they're just going to feed him back the same information over and over and over and over again, and you're never gonna get out of that bubble. You're never gonna pop the bubble of, you know, the tiny world that you live in. And believe me, you live in a tiny world. Like, all of you, everybody lives in a tiny world, and there is so much out there, and if you just open your mind a little bit and allow some of that information to come in, you know, I feel like it's going to serve you.
And I mean, like, I don't think, like, you should go into friendships with and I'm sure you would never do this, like, you wouldn't go into the friendship with the idea that, oh, this person is black, I should be friends with them. Like, that's not what you're saying at all.
I need to, like, fill in my check mark for having...
for having a black friend, having an Indian friend, having a Native American friend. Like, that's not what you're saying.
Yeah,
it's like, just be open. Like, don't look at someone who is black or who presents themselves as stereotypically queer or something. Like, don't look at people like that and be like, oh, I don't want them in my life. Like, be open to people who...
Yeah, and, like...
can who can be beneficial and who can help you grow and help them grow. Make it a two-way street. Help each other grow, because that's really what friendship is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really beautiful way of putting it. It's like you're really like growing together and just learning together about the world, because we have such a vast, wonderful world with so much out there to offer us. You know, if we just, you know, go and reach for it. And I'm not trying to say like, well, I have this kind of friend and I have this kind of friend, because it sounds very Trumpy. You know, I have a gay friend, so I can't be homophobic, kind of like a thing. But it's like, you know, I was just trying to like talk to this guy about just having, you know, people who haven't necessarily had your same shared life experience around you. And but I don't know. I think that representation is important in your friend groups. I think representation is important in media. I think it's important in the workplace. I just like, it's really like, it's really a disservice to all of the people in our country and all of the people in our world to keep just, you know, being in our little boxes of, and like staying in those little boxes.
Yeah, I mean, this is like this has nothing to do with like per se these kinds of labels or anything, which again, that's the best choice of words we have at the moment, but it's not the really a good one. But
it's not a good one.
Yeah, but
this is why I told you I'd be bad at this.
No, you're fine. But yeah, it's like not about these identifying factors, but one of my best friends is pre-med, and I know literally nothing about medical stuff. Like my knowledge of science and medical things comes from Grey's Anatomy. That's the extent of my knowledge. And having someone who has this much different experience from me and hearing her stories about, you know, what it's like to be in a hospital as, you know, not a patient, it's so interesting to me because it's a different experience. Having someone with a different experience in your life is so interesting. I get to learn these new things, and you know, again, I didn't go into this friendship with like, oh, she's pre-med, because like I didn't know that when I met her. Like we were freshmen in high school. I didn't know anything, but it's given us so much to talk about because we get to share this stuff. I get to share what it's like to be, you know, part of the book community, and she gets to share what it's like to learn this kind of medical information, and it's again helping each other grow, helping each other evolve together, to expand, and that's really beautiful. And I just think that like you don't gain anything if you restrict yourself to people who always think like you. And obviously like that doesn't mean like you have to go make friends with Trump supporters. Like we're not like saying that that's what you need to do at all, but it's just like like we're not saying like go be best friends with a Trump supporter or go make friends with the racist white people. Like that's not our argument, like, in the slightest, because there are people who argue that, and I don't think that that's fair. I don't think you should be making friends with people who like are dangerous to be around.
Don't force yourself to be around people who make you uncomfortable. But you know, like, there are people on the other side, like there are people on the right who are respectful, and you can have like respectful conversations with. Like one thing that I love doing is like both my parents are really conservative still. Like I guess my dad would be like more like libertarian right now, but because he wants to step away from the Republican Party. Not the point. But I still like love talking like politics and social issues with both of my parents, despite the fact that we disagree on like literally almost everything. But just being able to hear the perspective and why the other side thinks a certain way makes me better argue my points. Because I know why they think their points. Sorry, do you have something else to say? Finish your thought. I do, but it's different, so you can finish, and I also forgot it, so.
I guess my point is that, like, if there's a black person out there, like, you're not obligated to be friends with or talk to, like, a racist person. Like, that's our argument. Or, like, a Muslim person is not obligated to talk to someone who thinks all Muslims are terrorists. But, like, if you're creating political opinions and such, it's useful and important to understand the other side, because understanding the other side helps you better formulate your argument, which is kind of what you were saying. Like,
Yeah.
there is something to being with people who don't think exactly the same as you. Like, no, like, all my friends, we have the same baseline. Like, we all have the same baseline of generally thinking all people deserve human rights, which is a pretty good baseline to have. I feel like that's solid in this world, but we don't all have the exact same points of view in every which way, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of like the same deal, like, with me and my friends is, and, like, my little group is, like, you know, we all believe that all people should be equal, and, but I think that's kind of baseline for where we live, too, though. Like,
yeah, I mean, I hope it is. Yeah.
At least where I reside, that is very, very baseline. But we don't all have the same views. We don't all have the same, you know, even just base political ideologies. We don't share all that, and it makes it really good when we talk about things like that, because we don't all think the same thing, so we can hear like feedback on like what, you know, what people from this point of view, why they think that. And I think it's really helpful.
I think that representation in all forms is so powerful. Like, representation of ideas, of identities, it's so powerful, and that kind of diversity is just like, it just makes life a much better experience, a much more fulfilling experience.
It just makes it so much more enjoyable. If you're not just, if you live the same, like, if you live the same boring 9 to 5, you know, you work a office job, and, you know, you go out for drinks with Bill and Ted, oh my god.
Bill and Ted.
Bill and Ted from The Excellent Adventure. No, Bill and Ted as in your boring office coworkers who think the exact same thing as you. You go out for drinks with them every Friday, and then you go home to your wife, Martha, and she, you know, this is your life, and you live with the same people who think the same thing as you. Every single day, you're just going to be, you know, fed back the same information over and over and over again, and you're never going to even have the opportunity to think anything new.
Yeah. I just feel like living a diverse and representative life is so much more fulfilling at the end of the day. You grow and you evolve into a better and a smarter person, and a more open and a kinder person, honestly. And that's really what should be at the core of everything.
I mean, it definitely helps you be more empathetic to other people's problems, because while you may not be able to understand them, and that's something I really try to do, is I try to, you know, if I'm talking to someone who's having a difficult experience, even if I do have some, like, expertise in that area. I don't want to say expertise. But even if I do have some, like, experience dealing with that problem, I'm not going to tell them that I understand, because I don't understand how they're processing it. I don't understand whatever, but I can empathize. And I can understand that whatever it is that person A might be going through, that it's difficult for them, and that, you know, they're going through the motions, and that they're working at it. But, you know, it's harder to empathize with